What if the reason you can't speak English well isn't because you're lazy or stupid, but because you've been trying too hard to be perfect? This video is my real story. No grammar drills. No motivation nonsense. Just a pile of yellow sticky notes, a broken marriage, and 3 tiny words that saved everything. If you've ever wanted to give up, stay. Your heart already understands more than you think. The morning I hid in the bathroom. Picture this, you're sitting on your bathroom floor at 5:47 in the morning. Haven't brushed your teeth. Hair looks like a bird's nest. And you're crying so hard you can barely breathe. Not because you just watched a sad movie, but because your husband, the man you love more than anything in the world, asked you a very simple question, "Hey, you okay?" And you couldn't answer. Not because you lost your voice. Not because you were giving him the silent treatment. But because you didn't know how to say, "I'm not okay" in English the right way. You were scared of bad grammar. Scared of pronouncing okay like okay with a heavy accent. Scared he would laugh. Or worse, he would give you that pity look like, "Oh man, I married the wrong person." So what did you do? You smiled. You nodded. You said, "I'm fine," the 2 easiest words on planet Earth. Then you quietly walked into the bathroom, locked the door, sat down on the cold floor, and cried like a toddler lost in a supermarket. Sound familiar? Because I've been there. That Tuesday morning. Winter in Oregon, rain pouring down, cold seeping into your bones. My husband, a 6 feet 1 inch guy from Texas with hands the size of frying pans, knocked softly on the bathroom door. "Babe? You've been in there for 20 minutes. I wanted to scream, "I'm not okay. I'm lonely. I miss my native language. I'm scared you're bored of me because I can't say anything interesting." But my mouth only produced one word, "Fine." And that's when I realized something terrifying. I was losing myself inside my own home. Not because I didn't know English, but because I was too afraid to speak imperfect English. Do you know what your brain does in moments like that? It's honestly ridiculous. The University of California ran a study in 2025. They asked second language learners to do a simple speaking task on camera. One group was told, "Just speak naturally. Mistakes are fine." The other group was told, "Try to sound perfect. Native speakers will judge you." The result? The second group showed a 43% decrease in activity in Broca's area, the part of your brain that processes language. Almost half. Their brains shut down because they were terrified of being judged. And I was the living, breathing example of that study. That morning, I didn't lose vocabulary. I knew hundreds of words. I knew sad. I knew lonely. I knew tired. But my brain was busy processing a different task. How do I avoid being laughed at? It's like trying to walk on a tightrope high above the ground, and instead of looking ahead, you keep staring down into the abyss. Of course you're going to fall. And I fell. Many times. But this story isn't about my falls. This story is about a yellow sticky note. A tiny, slightly dirty, coffee-smelling piece of paper. And on it, just 3 little words in English, "Your English is enough." I found it at a small coffee shop in Portland, Oregon, a place I often went to escape the suffocating feeling inside my own house. Some stranger had written it and left it behind. Or maybe they left it on purpose. I'll never know. But I do know this, that little sticky note changed my entire life. Not because it taught me a new word, but because it gave me permission to stop hating myself for not being perfect. Are you hating yourself for the same thing? Every morning you wake up and promise yourself, today I'll speak English really well. Then by nightfall you feel like you failed, and you call yourself useless. That's a toxic loop. And it's not helping you at all. Let me tell you a secret, native English speakers, Americans, they mess up every single day. They say should have instead of should have. They stumble over lay versus lie. They use the wrong tense, wrong prepositions, wrong everything. And does anyone die? No. They still go to work, still love each other, still laugh. So why are you so much harder on yourself? Maybe because you've been laughed at before. Maybe because someone corrected you in a condescending tone. Maybe because you've been carrying around a belief that English has to be perfect for me to be respected. I'm here to tell you, that belief is the biggest piece of garbage you're holding in your head. Throw it away. Right now. And if you don't know where to throw it, then stick with me. Because the next part of this story is when I started building the sticky note wall in my tiny kitchen. A yellow wall, full of completely broken English sentences, that somehow brought my family back together. But before we get there, want to try something? Look at the sticky note in your own head. Ask yourself, what am I writing on it every morning? If the answer is I'm not good enough, then it's time to rewrite it. The post-it that found me. So there I was. Sitting on that cold bathroom floor. Feeling like the universe had personally selected me to be the worst English speaker in the entire state of Oregon. I had a husband who loved me, a roof over my head, and a brain that apparently forgot how to say I'm sad the moment someone asked. That's a special kind of lonely, you know? The kind where you're not actually alone, but you feel completely invisible. I stayed in that bathroom for another 10 minutes. Then I washed my face, practiced a fake smile in the mirror. It looked terrifying, by the way, like a serial killer trying to be friendly. And walked out. My husband was already in the kitchen, making coffee. He looked at me, and I could tell he wanted to say something. But he didn't. He just handed me a mug and said, "Here. You need this." That was the thing about him. He wasn't a big talker. He was a doer. An American doer. You know the type, fixes things, builds things, shows love by changing your car oil instead of saying I love you. Sweet, but also, quiet. Too quiet. And in that quietness, I heard my own failure echo even louder. I drank the coffee. I went through the motions. And then I did what I always did when the walls felt too close. I grabbed my jacket and walked to the coffee shop 3 blocks away. It was a tiny place called Brew and Benet. The kind of spot where the barista knows your order before you say it. Where the chairs don't match. Where someone's always left a book behind on the windowsill. I loved it because no one expected me to talk. I could just point at the menu, nod, and disappear into a corner. That morning, I ordered my usual, a medium dark roast with oat milk, and sat by the window. Rain was dripping down the glass. The whole world looked gray and blurry. And I remember thinking, this is it. This is my life now. A permanent fog where I can't speak and no one really hears me. Then I looked down at the little table next to my chair. And there it was. A yellow sticky note. Not perfectly square, someone had ripped it a little crooked. Slightly crinkled at the edges. And written on it, in handwriting that looked like it belonged to a tired but kind person, were 3 words. Your English is enough. I stared at it for what felt like 5 minutes. I turned it over. Nothing on the back. I looked around the coffee shop. Who left this? The barista? The person before me? A stranger who saw me walking in every day, struggling to order, and decided to leave a tiny bomb of kindness on a random table? I'll never know. But here's what I do know, that three-word sentence hit me harder than any textbook, any grammar lesson, any "you can do it" speech ever had. Why? Because it wasn't telling me to try harder. It wasn't telling me to be better. It was telling me that where I already was, that was enough. Do you understand how revolutionary that is? For months, I had been swimming against a current that didn't exist. I thought I needed to reach some imaginary finish line called fluency before I deserved to feel okay. Before I deserved to speak. Before I deserved to be loved in English. But that sticky note was like someone grabbing my shoulders and saying, "Stop. Breathe. You're already here. You're already communicating. You're already trying. That's the whole thing. That's literally it. Now, I know what you're thinking. Come on. A sticky note? That's a little dramatic, isn't it? Maybe. But let me tell you something about the human brain. We think we need big, dramatic changes to shift our lives. A new job. A new country. A new relationship. But science says otherwise. A 2024 study from Stanford University found that small, unexpected positive cues, like a kind note, a smile from a stranger, a compliment you didn't see coming, can rewire your emotional response faster than any long-term motivational plan. Why? Because your brain is wired to notice surprises. When something unexpected and good happens, your brain releases dopamine, not a huge flood, just a little squirt. And that tiny squirt is enough to open a door. To make you pause. To make you think, wait. Maybe I've been looking at this wrong. That's exactly what happened to me. I wasn't suddenly fluent. I didn't walk out of that coffee shop speaking like a TED Talk host. But I did something more important. I put the sticky note in my pocket and I didn't throw it away. I kept it. 4 days. 4 weeks. I'd pull it out when I felt that familiar panic rising in my chest, the panic of not finding the right word, the panic of sounding stupid. The panic of being judged. And I'd read it again, "Your English is enough." And slowly, something started to shift. Not my grammar. Not my vocabulary. Not my accent. But my relationship with all of those things. I stopped trying to be perfect. I started trying to be present. And that, my friend, is where the real story begins. Because that little yellow note didn't just change me. It started a chain reaction. A few days later, I did something terrifying. I left a sticky note for my husband. Not a long one. Just 2 words, "Thank you." He found it on the bathroom mirror. And that night, for the first time in months, he smiled at me, not a polite smile, but a real one. The kind that crinkles the corners of his eyes. And I thought, what if small words really do hold big hearts? What if you don't need a perfect English sentence to fix a broken marriage? What if you just need 3 words on a yellow square? What if the person who left that note at the coffee shop wasn't saving me, but was actually showing me how to save myself? Here's the part where I usually tell you to go practice your English for an hour. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to ask you something weird. Go find a sticky note. Any color. Write 3 words in English on it. Something real. Something small. You matter. Keep going. I see you. Leave it somewhere unexpected, your mirror, your fridge, your car dashboard. Then watch what happens. Because the brain doesn't respond to lectures. It responds to surprises. And you, my friend, are about to surprise yourself. But that's not where the story ends. Because after that first note to my husband, something else happened. Something I didn't expect. Something that made me realize that sticky notes weren't just for me, they were for us. And that's what we're talking about in the next part. 3 words that changed everything. Let me ask you something weird. When was the last time someone said 3 words to you that made your entire body relax? Not I love you, that's too obvious. I mean something smaller. Something like I made coffee. Or you go first. Or I'm not mad. 3 little words that carry more weight than 100 perfect sentences. For me, it happened on a Thursday morning. 3 days after I left that thank you sticky note on the bathroom mirror. I woke up late, the kind of late where the sun is already doing that annoying bright thing through the curtains. My husband had already left for work. And on my nightstand, next to my cold coffee mug from yesterday, was a yellow sticky note. His handwriting. Messy. Almost illegible. Like a doctor writing a prescription for a patient he's already forgotten. 3 words, you make us better. I read it once. Then twice. Then a third time, because my brain refused to believe what my eyes were seeing. You make us better. Not your English is improving. Not try harder. Not you'll get there someday. Just a simple, quiet statement of fact, as if he was saying the sky is blue or water is wet. You make us better. Now, here's the thing about my husband. He's not a poet. He's not a writer. He's a guy who expresses love by fixing the garbage disposal and remembering to buy your favorite brand of peanut butter. Words don't come easily to him, in any language. So for him to sit down, write 3 words, and leave them for me to find? That was the emotional equivalent of him climbing Mount Everest in flip-flops. But here's what really got me. He didn't write your English is better. He wrote you make us better. Not my language skills. Not my accent. Not my vocabulary. Me. The whole messy, broken, crying on the bathroom floor version of me. That version, apparently, made us, our marriage, our family, our weird little 2-person unit, better. I cried, obviously. Not the sad bathroom floor kind of cry. The kind where your chest feels too small for your heart. The kind where you have to sit down because your knees forgot how to work. And that's when I realized something that changed everything. He had been watching me the whole time. Not judging my grammar. Not counting my mistakes. Just watching me try. And somehow, my trying, not my succeeding, not my fluency, not my perfection, my trying was making our life better. Do you understand how backwards that is? Because every English learning app, every YouTube video, every motivational speaker tells you the opposite. They say, you'll be happy when you're fluent. You'll be confident when you have no accent. You'll be accepted when you sound like a native. But that sticky note was saying, you're already accepted. You're already enough. You're already making things better. Right now. With your broken English. With your pauses. With your mistakes. I want to pause here and tell you about something called the arrival fallacy. It's a term coined by psychologist Tal Ben-Shahar. The arrival fallacy is the belief that once you reach a certain goal, once you arrive at a certain destination, then you'll be happy. Then you'll be enough. Then you'll finally feel okay. The problem? The arrival fallacy is a liar. Because when you reach that goal, your brain just moves the finish line further away. You get fluent, and suddenly you want to sound like a professor. You sound like a professor, and suddenly you want to lose your accent. You lose your accent, and suddenly you're worried about using the right idiom. There's always another level. Always another reason to feel not good enough. But here's what that sticky note taught me: what if the arrival was never the point? What if the trying was the whole thing? My husband didn't fall in love with my English. He fell in love with me. With the way I laugh at stupid jokes. With the way I leave my socks everywhere. With the way I cry during dog commercials. That person, the one who existed long before I could speak English without stumbling, that person was already enough. The English was just a bonus. A tool. A way to say thank you and I see you and you make us better. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Okay, but my husband isn't like that. My husband is critical. My family makes fun of my accent. My boss corrects my emails. I hear you. I really do. Not everyone has a quiet Texan who leaves sticky notes on nightstands. But here's the thing, you can be that person for yourself. Before my husband wrote that note, I had already started writing notes to myself. Not your amazing, fake positivity junk. Real notes. Small notes. You showed up today. You ordered coffee without pointing. You said sorry correctly. Tiny wins. Microscopic victories. The kind that feel stupid to celebrate but somehow work anyway. And here's the science part, because you know I love the science part. A 2025 study from the University of Texas found that self-generated positive feedback, writing down your own small wins, activates the same neural reward pathways as receiving a compliment from someone else. Your brain literally cannot tell the difference between you did great from a friend and you did great from yourself. That's not self-help nonsense. That's neuroscience. Your brain believes what you tell it. So if you keep telling it I'm not good enough, it will find evidence to support that. And if you start telling it I showed up today, just that, nothing fancy, it will start looking for evidence of that too. The sticky note my husband left me didn't fix my English. It didn't make me fluent overnight. But it gave me permission to stop fighting myself. And once I stopped fighting myself, I started noticing something strange. I was actually learning faster. Why? Because my brain wasn't wasting energy on fear anymore. Fear is expensive. It burns through glucose like a Hummer burns through gas. When you're constantly worried about making mistakes, your brain is too busy running threat detection software to actually learn anything. But when you feel safe, when you believe that your English is enough, your brain relaxes. And when it relaxes, it opens up. And when it opens up, words start sticking. That's the secret that no one tells you. You don't learn English by trying harder. You learn English by trying less hard. By giving yourself permission to be bad. By allowing mistakes to be part of the process instead of the end of the world. So here's what I want you to do. Right now. Don't wait. Get something to write on, your phone, a napkin, your hand if you have to. Write down 3 words. Not I am perfect. Not I will be fluent. Just 3 small, true words. Maybe I am trying. Or I showed up. Or that's enough. Then put it somewhere you'll see it tomorrow morning. Your mirror. Your fridge. Your phone wallpaper. And then notice what happens. Because the brain doesn't respond to violence. It responds to tiny, consistent kindnesses. And you, my friend, have been starving your brain of kindness for way too long. But the story doesn't end here. Because after that note, something shifted between me and my husband. We started leaving notes for each other every morning. And that's when the real magic, and the real mess, began. The silence between two hearts. So here's the thing nobody tells you about sticky notes. They're amazing for saying thank you and you make us better. But they're also really good for avoiding real conversations. And for a while, that's exactly what we did. My husband and I. We turned into two people who communicated exclusively through little yellow squares. Coffee's ready. I'll be late. Milk is almost out. Practical. Efficient. And completely hollow. We were like two roommates who happened to share a bed. The notes kept the house running, but they didn't keep our hearts running. And somewhere along the way, the silence between us grew so thick you could cut it with a knife. Have you ever been in a room with someone you love, but the air feels heavy? Not angry. Not fighting. Just absent. Like you're both there, but neither of you is really present. That was us. Every evening. He'd sit on the couch watching football. I'd sit at the kitchen table pretending to read. And the only sound was the TV and the occasional sigh. Here's the painful truth I didn't want to admit, the problem wasn't my English anymore. The problem was that we had forgotten how to talk at all. You see, when you struggle with a second language, there's this weird phase that no one warns you about. At first, you're relieved to communicate at all, even if it's just sticky notes. Hey, I said milk correctly. Victory. But then, after a while, the relief wears off. And you realize that sticky notes are great for logistics but terrible for, I'm scared about my mom's health or I feel like you don't see me anymore or I'm not sure we're going to make it. Those conversations don't fit on a 3x3 square. And so we didn't have them. We just let the silence grow. Like mold in the corners of a damp bathroom. Quiet. Unnoticed. Slowly poisoning everything. I remember one night specifically. It was a Friday. He had cooked dinner, spaghetti. His specialty, and we sat across from each other at the small wooden table we bought from a garage sale for $40. The food was good. The candles were lit. On paper, it looked like a romantic evening. But we ate in complete silence. Fork. Chew. Fork. Chew. 20 minutes. Not one word. And I thought, this is what dying feels like. Not a dramatic death. A slow one. The kind where you're still breathing but you've already stopped living. Later that night, I locked myself in the bathroom again. Not crying this time. Just sitting. Staring at the tile floor. And I asked myself a question that scared me more than any English exam. Do I even know how to talk to him anymore? Not in English. In any language? Because here's the thing about cultural differences that nobody puts in the travel brochures. Americans and, say, someone from a more indirect culture, they fight differently. They apologize differently. They ask for help differently. My husband, the Texan, was raised to say what he means and mean what he says. If he's fine, he says I'm fine. If he's angry, he says I'm angry. Direct. Simple. No hidden messages. But me? I was raised in a culture where you don't say I'm angry. You say I'm fine in a tone that means the exact opposite. Where you hint. Where you imply. Where you expect the other person to read between the lines. And between those lines? That's where we got lost. Because he couldn't read what wasn't there. And I couldn't say what I actually felt, not because I didn't know the English words, but because saying it directly felt rude. Felt aggressive. Felt wrong in every bone of my body. So we stayed silent. Two hearts beating in the same house, on the same street, in the same city, but miles apart. I want to tell you about a study because, again, I love science. In 2024, researchers at the University of Chicago looked at couples from different cultural backgrounds. They found that misinterpreted silence was the #1 predictor of relationship dissatisfaction, not language ability, not accent, not grammar mistakes. Silence. One person's "I'm thinking" sounds like I'm angry to the other. One person's "I need space" sounds like I don't love you anymore. One person's "quiet evening" feels like rejection to someone who was raised in a loud, expressive household. And that was us. I thought his silence meant he was bored of me. He thought my silence meant I was angry at him. Neither of us was right. But both of us were hurting. Have you ever been there? In that weird space where you want to say something, you desperately need to say something, but the words get stuck somewhere between your brain and your mouth? And the longer they stay stuck, the heavier they feel. Until eventually, you convince yourself that it's too late. That the moment has passed. That bringing it up now would be weird, awkward, pointless. So you don't. And the silence grows another layer. Here's what I learned, though. Silence isn't empty. Silence is full. Full of things we're too scared to say. Full of feelings we can't name. Full of hopes we've given up on. The space between two people is never actually empty, it's just unpainted. And unpainted space eventually rusts. One night, after another silent dinner, I did something desperate. I took a sticky note, yes, another one, and I wrote something I had never said out loud. Not in English. Not in my native language. Not to anyone. For words, I feel really lonely. I walked over to where he was sitting on the couch. I handed him the note. And then I stood there, heart pounding, like a kid waiting to be yelled at. He read it. Looked up at me. And for a second, I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen in months. Not pity. Not confusion. Recognition. Like I had just handed him a key to a door he didn't know existed. He didn't say anything. He just put down the remote, opened his arms, and held me. For a long time. No words. Just his heartbeat against my ear. And I realized something, the silence wasn't the enemy. The silence was just a symptom. The real enemy was the fear that my words, my imperfect, broken, sticky note words, weren't worth saying. But they were. They are. And so are yours. You don't need perfect English to say I'm lonely. You don't need perfect grammar to say I miss you. You don't need a flawless accent to say I'm scared we're drifting apart. You just need the courage to put it on a yellow square, or say it with a shaking voice, and hand it to someone who matters. Because here's the beautiful, terrifying truth, the people who love you don't need you to be eloquent. They just need you to be real. And being real? That's not a language skill. That's a heart skill. But that night wasn't the end of our problems. Not even close. Because after he held me, after we sat in silence that actually felt safe, something else happened. Something that almost broke us for good. And that's what we're talking about in the next part. A grocery list accidentally saved us. So there we were. Fresh off the most honest moment we'd had in months. He held me. I cried a little. The football game ended without anyone caring who won. And for about 24 hours, things felt different. Lighter. Like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. But here's the thing about honesty, it's not a one-time event. It's not a magic pill you swallow and then everything's fixed forever. Honesty is like brushing your teeth. You have to do it every day. And we hadn't built that habit yet. The very next evening, we fell right back into silence. Not the heavy, scary kind. Just the tired, comfortable kind. The kind that says we're both exhausted and don't have the energy to be vulnerable again. He watched a documentary about vintage cars. I scrolled through my phone. And the sticky note stayed blank. I remember thinking, great. We had one good moment. Now what? Do we just wait for the next crisis to force us to talk again? That's when the grocery list happened. Saturday morning. Rainy, because Oregon. I was making breakfast, scrambled eggs, slightly burned toast, the usual. My husband was putting on his shoes to go to the store. He yelled from the hallway, "Hey, we're out of milk. Can you write it down?" I grabbed a sticky note, because at this point, our house ran on sticky notes, and I wrote. Milk. Eggs. Bread. Love. Wait. Love? I stared at the note. My hand had betrayed me. Instead of writing milk, eggs, bread, the boring, practical, safe list, my stupid, tired, secretly romantic brain had added a fourth item. Love. As if love was something you could pick up at the grocery store, right next to the organic almond milk. I almost crumpled it. Almost threw it away and started over. But my husband walked back into the kitchen at that exact moment, grabbed the note out of my hand, glanced at it, and said, completely deadpan, "We already have love. But we're out of milk." Then he smiled. That crinkly-eyed smile. And walked out the door. I stood there frozen for a full 10 seconds. And then I laughed. Not a polite, controlled laugh. A real one. The kind that makes your stomach hurt and your eyes water. I laughed so hard I had to lean against the counter. Because here's what happened in that stupid, accidental moment, he saw my mistake. He didn't correct it. He didn't make fun of it. He just played along. He treated my typo like it was a joke we were both in on. Like my broken English was something to smile about, not something to be ashamed of. And that, my friend, is when something cracked open inside me. You see, for months, I had been treating every English mistake like a crime scene. Every wrong word was evidence of my failure. Every typo was proof that I didn't belong. I was the most unforgiving grammar police officer in the world, and I was arresting myself every single day. But that grocery list? That stupid love instead of nothing? My husband turned it into a gift. He didn't say, "You wrote it wrong." He said, "We already have love." He took my error and made it into an inside joke. A tiny bridge. A moment of connection that perfect English could never have created. Let me tell you about a study, because you know I can't resist. Researchers at MIT in 2025 looked at how couples respond to each other's mistakes. Not big mistakes, small ones. Typos. Mispronunciations. Forgetting a word. They found that couples who responded playfully, with humor, with acceptance, with a gentle tease instead of a harsh correction, had significantly higher relationship satisfaction and, get this, the non-native speaker's language improved faster. Faster. Not slower. The couples who laughed at mistakes together learned better than couples who took every error seriously. Why? Because the brain learns through positive reinforcement, not punishment. When you make a mistake and someone responds with warmth, your brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. And oxytocin creates a state of psychological safety. And psychological safety is the single best predictor of language acquisition. Not flashcards. Not grammar drills. Safety. My husband didn't know any of this science. He just knew that I looked terrified when he grabbed that note, and he wanted me to stop being terrified. So he made a joke. And that joke told my brain, you're safe here. Even when you mess up. Especially when you mess up. When he came back from the store, with milk, eggs, bread, and no love because he said they were sold out, I was still smiling. He put the groceries away, and then he did something unexpected. He took a fresh sticky note, wrote something on it, and stuck it to the refrigerator. It said, next time, get love first. Milk can wait. I read it. Laughed again. And then I wrote back, deal. But you're carrying the bags. And just like that, the grocery list that wasn't a grocery list became the start of something new. Not a dramatic Hollywood reconciliation. Not a tearful speech about how we almost lost each other. Just two people, a bunch of yellow squares, and a quiet realization that mistakes weren't our enemy, they were our language. Here's what I want you to take from this. You're going to make mistakes in English. A lot of them. You're going to write love when you meant milk. You're going to say, I'm embarrassment instead of I'm embarrassed. You're going to mix up beach and bitch in a work email, and someone will screenshot it and send it to their group chat. It happens. It's fine. But here's the part you control, how you respond to your own mistakes. You can treat them like crimes. You can beat yourself up. You can replay them in your head at 3 a.m. and cringe until your toes curl. Or, and hear me out, you can treat them like a grocery list that accidentally said love. You can laugh. You can learn. You can let them become inside jokes between you and the people who actually matter. Because the people who matter? They don't need perfect English. They need you. The real you. The you who writes love when you're thinking about eggs. That's the version worth knowing. Now, I'm not saying every mistake will be funny. Some of them will hurt. Some of them will embarrass you so badly you want to move to a different planet. I've been there. But here's the pattern I noticed. The mistakes that almost killed me in the moment became the stories I laughed about the hardest 6 months later. That's the secret timeline. Embarrassment now. Story later. Inside joke forever. So here's your challenge for today. Go make a mistake in English. On purpose. Say the wrong word. Write the wrong thing. And when you do, don't apologize. Don't correct yourself immediately. Just see what happens. See who laughs with you instead of at you. See how it feels to be imperfect and okay with it. Because that grocery list mistake? It didn't just save our evening. It saved us. It reminded us that love, real love, doesn't require fluency. It requires presence. It requires play. It requires the courage to write love on a grocery list and leave it on the fridge for the whole world to see. But that was just the beginning. Because after the grocery list incident, something shifted in our house. The sticky notes started multiplying. They spread from the fridge to the bathroom mirror to the coffee maker to the front door. And before I knew it, we had built something I never expected, a wall. A yellow, messy, beautifully imperfect wall of small words holding big hearts. And that wall? It saved us in ways I'm still discovering. What American fine really means. By now, our kitchen looked like a yellow rainbow exploded. Sticky notes everywhere. On the fridge. On the coffee maker. On the microwave, which, by the way, we never used because my husband insisted on reheating everything in a pan like a 1950s diner cook. The notes were mostly simple stuff. Good morning. You looked tired. I made tea. Don't forget the dentist at 3. But there was one note that stopped me every time. It was stuck to the inside of the cabinet where we keep the coffee mugs. My husband had written it weeks ago, and I still couldn't stop reading it. You don't have to say fine anymore. I can handle the truth. I don't know why that one hit so hard. Maybe because fine had become my armor. My go-to. The word I hid behind every single time someone asked how I was doing. How are you? Fine. How was your day? Fine. Are you okay? Fine. But here's the thing about the word fine in American English. It's a liar. A beautiful, socially acceptable, completely useless liar. Because when an American says fine, they could mean anything from I'm genuinely doing well to I'm actively falling apart but don't want to talk about it to I'm so angry I might set something on fire. And as someone learning English as a second language, I had no idea which one was which. I thought fine was just fine. Simple. Neutral. Safe. But I was wrong. So wrong. Let me break this down for you, because this might be the most important cultural lesson I ever learned in the United States. Americans have a secret language hidden inside their simple words. And if you don't learn to read between the lines, you'll miss everything that matters. Take fine. If an American says fine with a flat tone and no eye contact, that's not fine. That's I'm upset but I don't want to start a fight. If they say fine with a sharp, clipped sound, that's I'm actually furious and you should probably sleep on the couch tonight. If they say fine with a sigh and a small smile, that might actually be fine. Or they might be exhausted. It's a guessing game. My husband, the Texan, was supposed to be the direct one. That's what I thought. Americans are direct, right? They say what they mean. No hidden meanings. No reading between the lines. Ha. Ha ha ha. That's what I believed for the first 2 years of our marriage. And then I realized that even the most direct American has layers. My husband would come home from work, I'd ask how was your day? And he'd say fine. But his shoulders would be up by his ears. His jaw would be tight. He'd pour himself a glass of water and drink it like he was trying to put out a fire in his throat. And I'd think, he said fine. So everything is fine. It was not fine. One evening, after a particularly silent dinner, we were back in one of those phases. I finally snapped. Not dramatically. Just asked a different question. Instead of how was your day? I asked, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you want to talk about it? He looked at me like I'd just spoken ancient Greek. Then he said, 2. And that was it. That was the breakthrough. He didn't want to talk. He wanted to sit. He wanted to be quiet. He wanted me to stop asking and just be there. His fine wasn't a lie. It was a translation of I'm too tired to explain, but I'm not angry at you, please just watch TV with me. I didn't learn that from a textbook. No ESL class teaches you the difference between a "I'm fine but I love you" fine and a "I'm fine but don't touch me" fine. You learn that by messing up. By misreading. By asking the wrong question 100 times until finally, you ask the right one. There's actually research on this. A 2023 study from Georgetown University looked at how non-native speakers interpret emotional tone in American English. The findings were brutal. Even advanced learners misread emotional cues 34% of the time. 34%. That's more than 1 out of every 3 conversations. And the most commonly misunderstood word? You guessed it. Fine. The study also found that non-native speakers who grew up in high-context cultures, where meaning is carried by tone, gesture, and situation, had an even harder time with American fine because they assumed there was more hidden meaning than there actually was. Meanwhile, Americans thought they were being perfectly clear. Everyone was confused. Everyone was frustrated. And everyone went home thinking the other person was being difficult. That was us. That was our marriage. 2 people speaking the same language but hearing completely different things. So here's what I started doing. I stopped trusting the word fine. Not in a paranoid way. Just. I added a second question. Every time. You said fine. Does fine mean good fine or tired fine or angry fine? At first, my husband thought I was being annoying. Then he realized I was actually trying to understand him. And that changed everything. Because here's the secret that no one tells you about communication, in any language. The words are only 20% of the message. The rest is body language, tone, context, and history. And if you're only listening to the words, you're missing most of the conversation. I started paying attention to his shoulders. His breathing. The way he held his coffee mug. The speed of his footsteps when he walked into the room. These were all sentences he was saying without opening his mouth. And slowly, painfully, I learned to read them. One night, he came home and didn't say fine at all. He just walked in, put his keys on the hook, and stood in the middle of the kitchen staring at the floor. I didn't ask how was your day. I didn't ask are you okay. I just walked over, took his hand, and pulled him to the couch. We sat in silence for 20 minutes. Then he said, "My dad's health isn't great." That was it. That was the whole conversation. And it was enough. Because I had finally learned that sometimes fine means I'm not ready to say it yet and silence means stay close. I want you to try something this week. The next time someone asks how you are, don't say fine. Say something real. Even if it's small. I'm tired. I'm okay-ish. I've been better. See how it feels. See how people respond. And when someone says fine to you, don't just accept it. Look at their eyes. Their posture. Their hands. Ask a second question if you need to. Fine good or fine bad? Because the people you love don't need you to guess. They need you to care enough to ask twice. And that brings me to the next part of the story. Because once I stopped accepting fine as an answer, something unexpected happened. Our sticky notes changed. They stopped being practical and started becoming honest. Really honest. The kind of honest that's terrifying to write and even more terrifying to read. And one of those notes almost broke me completely. But it also saved me. And that's what we're talking about next. The lowest note. You'd think after all that, the bathroom floor, the coffee shop sticky note, the grocery list miracle, The fine breakthrough, you think things would just keep getting better. Like a Hallmark movie where the couple holds hands and the credits roll. This is not a Hallmark movie. Because about 2 weeks after the fine conversation, I hit a wall. Not a metaphorical wall. A real, actual, I cannot do this anymore wall. The kind that makes you want to throw your hands up and announce to the universe, congratulations. You win. I quit. It started with a stupid phone call. My son's school. The teacher wanted to talk about his reading progress. Simple, right? Just a 5-minute conversation. But the moment she started talking, fast, cheerful, full of words like phonemic awareness and decoding strategies, my brain did that thing again. That freeze. That shutdown. The same one from the bathroom floor, but this time there was no bathroom to hide in. Just me, the phone, and a teacher waiting for a response. I understood maybe half of what she said. Maybe less. I mumbled something like, okay, thank you, I will look into it, which made absolutely no sense as a response to her question, and hung up. Then I sat on the kitchen floor. Not the bathroom this time. New floor, same tears. Here's the part of the story I haven't told you yet. The ugly part. The part where I stopped being the brave heroine of my own life and became a small, tired person who just wanted to go home, except home was 8,000 miles away and didn't exist anymore. I had been in the United States for a while by then. Long enough to know that the honeymoon phase was over. Long enough to have collected 1,000 small humiliations. The cashier who sighed when I couldn't understand the loyalty card question. The neighbor who stopped trying to talk to me after 2 awkward attempts. The parent-teacher conference where I sat silently while other moms chatted easily about soccer practice and summer camps. Each one of those moments was a tiny cut. And by themselves, they were nothing. A paper cut on your finger doesn't kill you. But 1,000 paper cuts? That's death by 1,000 small bleedings. And that day, after the phone call, I felt every single cut at once. I looked around the kitchen, at the sticky notes still clinging to the fridge, at the coffee maker. At the cabinet where my husband had written, "You don't have to say fine anymore," and I thought, what's the point? I've been trying so hard. For so long. And I still can't have a simple conversation with my son's teacher. I still sound like a robot. I still feel like a guest in my own life. That's the thing about learning English as an adult that no one warns you about. It's not just about grammar. It's not just about vocabulary. It's about the slow erosion of your identity. Because when you can't speak the way you think, you start to feel like the person you used to be is disappearing. The witty one. The funny one. The one who could make anyone laugh at a dinner party. Where did that person go? Buried somewhere under all the verb tenses and pronunciation drills. I didn't leave a sticky note for my husband that night. I didn't leave a note for anyone. I just went to bed early, faced the wall, and pretended to be asleep when he came in. He didn't ask. He just turned off the light. The next morning, I woke up before him. I went to the kitchen. I made coffee. And I wrote a note, not on a sticky note this time. On a piece of notebook paper. Longer than usual. Almost a letter. It said, "I don't think I can do this anymore." Not the marriage. The language. I'm so tired of feeling stupid. I'm tired of not being able to help our son with his homework. I'm tired of smiling and nodding when I don't understand. I love you. But I don't love who I become when I try to speak English. I need to stop. Just for a while. Please don't be angry. I folded it. Put it on the kitchen table. And then I did something I'd never done before. I left the house without my phone. I walked to the coffee shop, the same one where I found that first yellow note, and I sat in the corner for 3 hours. Just sat. Didn't order anything. Didn't talk to anyone. Just watched the rain and wondered if I had made a terrible mistake moving here, marrying him. Trying to build a life in a language that felt like wearing shoes 3 sizes too small. Around noon, I walked home. I was ready for I don't know what. Anger. Silence. A suitcase packed by the door. Instead, I found the kitchen table exactly as I'd left it. My note was still there. But next to it, on a yellow sticky note, my husband had written 4 words. Then let's be quiet together. I stared at it. Read it again. Then let's be quiet together. Not you're overreacting. Not just try harder. Not other people learn English, why can't you? Just an invitation. To stop. To be quiet. To be together in the silence instead of alone in the struggle. And that, right there, was the lowest note. Not because I gave up. But because I almost did. And someone reached into the darkness and said, I'll sit with you here. Here's what I've learned about rock bottom. It's not a place you fall into and stay forever. It's a place you pass through. But you can't skip it. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. You have to sit in it, feel how cold and hard it is, and then, slowly, stupidly, one tiny step at a time, start climbing back out. The difference between staying at the bottom and climbing out? Usually one person. One sentence. One sticky note that says, then let's be quiet together. That note didn't fix my English. It didn't magically make me fluent. But it gave me permission to stop fighting myself. And sometimes, that's the only thing you need to take the next breath. And then the next one. And then the one after that. But here's the part that still surprises me. That lowest note, the one I wrote, the one where I admitted I wanted to quit, ended up being the most important thing I ever put on paper. Because it wasn't until I admitted how broken I felt that I could actually start to heal. And healing, as it turns out, doesn't look like a straight line. It looks like a sticky note wall. One small word at a time. A child's 3 words. So there I was. At the lowest point. My husband had just written, then let's be quiet together, which was beautiful and kind and also, not a solution. I mean, you can't just be quiet forever. The dishes need washing. The kid needs help with homework. The school still calls about reading progress. Silence is a beautiful bandage, but eventually you have to take it off and look at the wound. I spent the next 2 days in a weird fog. Not crying. Not angry. Just numb. I went through the motions. Made breakfast. Poured coffee. Folded laundry. Answered my son's questions with one-word answers. He's 7, well, he was 7 then, and 7-year-olds notice more than you think. He kept looking at me with those big eyes, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't have all the pieces for. On the second evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table staring at nothing. My husband was at work. My son was supposed to be doing his spelling homework. Instead, he came over to me, climbed onto the chair next to mine, and put a piece of paper in front of me. It was a sticky note. A yellow one. Of course. On it, in wobbly 7-year-old handwriting, letters that leaned in different directions. An E that looked like a circle with a line through it. He had written 3 words, Mom. Try again. Not you're the best. Not I love you. Not don't be sad. Just, Mom. Try again. I read it once. Then again. Then a 3rd time. And then I started crying, not the sad bathroom floor cry, not the numb fog cry, but something else. Something that felt like a door opening in a room that had been sealed shut for months. Because here's the thing about kids. They don't overcomplicate things. Adults say, you need to work on your self-compassion and let's explore the root causes of your language anxiety, and have you considered a different learning modality? Kids just say try again. 3 words. That's it. And somehow, those 3 words from a 7-year-old hit me harder than any TED Talk, any motivational Instagram post, any well-meaning friend saying you'll get there someday. Why? Because he wasn't trying to fix me. He wasn't giving me advice. He was just reporting reality. Like he was saying the sky is blue or dinner is ready. Mom. Try again. That's just what you do. That's who you are. You fall down, you get up, you try again. I looked at him. He looked at me. And I said, in the most broken, cracked, imperfect English you've ever heard, okay. I will. He smiled. Then he went back to his spelling homework. And I sat there, holding that yellow sticky note like it was made of gold, and I realized something that changed everything. My son had never once corrected my English. Not once. He had heard me say, I go to store yesterday and she eat already and he don't like it, 1,000 grammar mistakes, 1,000 wrong tenses, 1,000 mangled prepositions. And he had never, ever said that's wrong, Mom. Why? Because he was 7. He didn't care about grammar. He cared about whether I was there. Whether I read him a story. Whether I laughed at his knock-knock jokes. My broken English was just my voice. And my voice was the one he wanted to hear before he fell asleep. That's when it hit me. The person who loved me the most in that house, the person who needed me the most, didn't give a single damn about my accent. He just wanted his mom. Now, let me pause here and tell you something that might sound crazy. Children are the best language teachers on the planet. Not because they know grammar, they don't. Not because they have patience, they have negative patience. But because they are completely, ruthlessly focused on meaning. They don't care how you say something. They care about what you're trying to say. A 2024 study from the University of Washington compared adults learning English in 2 different environments. One group practiced with other adults. The other group practiced with children ages 6 to 8. The result? The group that practiced with children showed 47% faster improvement in speaking fluency, not because the children corrected them, but because the children didn't correct them. The children just kept asking questions. And then what happened? Why did he do that? Can you tell me again? They forced the adults to keep talking, to keep trying, to keep finding a way to be understood. That's what my son was doing without even knowing it. Every time I stumbled over a word, he didn't jump in to fix it. He just waited. He looked at me with those big eyes. And his patience, his complete, unquestioning acceptance of my broken English, gave me permission to keep going. I think about that a lot. About how we adults are so quick to correct each other. So quick to point out mistakes. So quick to say actually, it's she goes, not she go, as if that's the most important thing in the world. But kids? Kids don't do that. Kids just want to know if you're coming to the park. If you're making pizza for dinner. If you'll watch cartoons with them. And somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that. I had forgotten that the whole point of language, the entire reason humans invented words in the first place, is to connect. Not to be correct. To connect. That sticky note from my son, Mom. Try again, wasn't just about English. It was about everything. About marriage. About parenting. About life. You fall down. You try again. You fail. You try again. You embarrass yourself at the parent-teacher conference. You try again. You write love on a grocery list. You try again. That night, after my son went to bed, I walked over to our sticky note wall, which by now had grown from the fridge to the entire side of a kitchen cabinet, and I added a new note. My first note in days. I wrote. Today I learned from a 7-year-old. My husband saw it the next morning. He didn't say anything. He just smiled, grabbed a sticky note, and added below it. Best teacher in the house. And just like that, the fog started to lift. Not because my English had improved. It hadn't. Not because my problems were solved. They weren't. But because I had been reminded of something I'd forgotten, the people who love you don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to keep showing up. My son didn't write Mom, be fluent or Mom, lose your accent or Mom, study harder. He wrote Mom, try again. Because trying, not succeeding, not mastering, not winning, just trying, is what he needed to see. And maybe that's what you need to hear right now. Not you'll be fluent someday, that's too far away. Not you're amazing, that might not feel true yet. Just this, try again. One more time. One more sticky note. One more sentence. One more conversation where you stumble and pause and feel stupid. Do it anyway. Not because you'll be perfect. But because someone is watching you, a child, a partner, a friend, and they don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to keep showing up. That sticky note from my son became the cornerstone of our yellow wall. Not because it was beautifully written, it looked like a chicken had walked across the paper. But because it was true. And sometimes, 3 true words are worth more than 1,000 perfect ones. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Because after that night, I didn't just keep trying. I started doing something different. Something that changed not just my English, but the way our whole family talked to each other. And it all started with a wall. The post-it wall became our language. After my son wrote Mom. Try again, after I cried and hugged him and felt that tiny door crack open, I did something I should have done months earlier. I stopped trying to learn English alone. Not stopped learning. Stopped doing it alone. You see, for the longest time I treated English like a personal failure. My problem. My weakness. My shame to carry. I would hide in the bathroom, cry on the kitchen floor, write desperate notes to my husband, but I never once said, "Hey, can we do this together?" Because that would mean admitting I couldn't fix myself. And my pride, that stupid, heavy, useless pride, didn't want to admit that. But after my son's note, something shifted. I realized that my family wasn't judging my English. They were just living with it. They heard my mistakes every day and somehow still loved me. So why was I the only one still fighting myself? That weekend, I went to the hardware store, alone, which was terrifying, and bought a giant whiteboard. Not a small one. A huge one. The kind teachers use in classrooms. I dragged it home, hung it on the emptiest wall in our kitchen, and stood back to admire it. My husband walked in and said, "What in the world is that?" I said, "Our new language." He looked confused. I didn't blame him. I was confused too. But I had a theory, a crazy, unscientific, probably stupid theory. I thought, what if we stopped treating English like something I needed to learn alone and started treating it like something our whole family played with together? So I took a marker, black, thick, the kind that doesn't smudge, and I wrote at the top of the whiteboard, "No grammar police allowed." Then I wrote below it, "Write one sentence today." Any sentence. Wrong is fine. My son went first. He wrote, "I lick pizza." 2 spelling mistakes. 0 cares given. My husband went second. He wrote, "You both make me tired and happy." Not a complete sentence by textbook standards. Didn't matter. Then they both looked at me. So I wrote, "Today I didn't cry in the bathroom." That was my sentence. Imperfect. Honest. Mine. And just like that, the post-it wall was born. Except it wasn't just sticky notes anymore. It was a whiteboard. A public, permanent, everyone can see it record of our broken, beautiful, completely non-textbook English. Here's what happened next. Something I didn't expect. The whiteboard became addictive. Every morning, someone would add a new sentence. My son would write about his dinosaur obsession. My husband would write something sarcastic about work. I would write whatever I could manage, sometimes one word, sometimes a whole paragraph of mangled grammar. And slowly, without any lesson plan, without any curriculum, without any pressure, my English started improving. Not because I was studying harder, but because I was using it. Every day. In front of people who didn't care if I was wrong. The whiteboard was a safe zone. A playground. A place where mistakes weren't just allowed, they were celebrated. My son wrote, "I run fast," and my husband wrote underneath, "No you didn't, you tripped over the cat." They were joking. They were playing. And in that play, I saw something beautiful, language as connection, not as performance. Let me give you the science behind this, because it's too good not to share. A 2025 study from the University of California, Irvine, looked at something called low-stakes language environments. They took 2 groups of English learners. One group studied in traditional classrooms with tests and corrections. The other group was put in an environment where mistakes were ignored and communication was the only goal. Think game nights, cooking classes, casual conversations. The result? The low-stakes group learned twice as fast as the classroom group. Twice as fast. Not because they were smarter, but because their brains weren't constantly in fight or flight mode. When you're not terrified of being wrong, your brain actually lets you learn. That's what the whiteboard did for me. It removed the terror. No grades. No corrections. No judgment. Just a wall where my family left little pieces of themselves every day. Within 2 weeks, the whiteboard was full. We had to buy a second one. Then a third. Then my husband just painted a section of the kitchen wall with whiteboard paint, which, by the way, is a real thing and it's amazing. The wall became our family's second language. Not English. Something else. Something that was part English, part inside jokes, part drawings, part hearts and exclamation points. My son would draw a picture of a T-Rex eating a taco and write, "He is hungry." My husband would write mood underneath. I would write, "I don't understand why T-Rex like taco, grammar disaster," and they would both laugh and explain it to me. And that was the magic. They explained things to me. They didn't correct me. There's a difference. Correction says you're wrong. Explanation says, "Let me help you see what I see." One shuts you down. The other brings you closer. I started noticing changes in how I spoke outside the house too. The next time the school called, I didn't panic. I still didn't understand everything, but I said, "Can you say that again slower?" without feeling like a failure. The cashier at the grocery store asked me a question I didn't understand, and instead of nodding and guessing, I said, "Sorry, I'm learning English." "What did you say?" And you know what happened? Nothing bad. The cashier smiled. The teacher repeated herself. The world did not end because I admitted I wasn't perfect. Here's what I want you to take from this. You don't need a whiteboard. You don't need a painted wall. But you do need a low-stakes place where you can be wrong without punishment. That could be a notebook you write in every night. A voice memo you record on your phone and delete immediately. A friend who has agreed to just listen and never correct. A pet. Dogs are excellent listeners and terrible grammar critics. The point is, stop performing. Start playing. Because here's the truth that no one tells you, the people who learned English the fastest? They're not the ones who studied the hardest. They're the ones who found a way to make it fun. Who found a person or a place where mistakes were part of the game, not the end of it. My whiteboard wall didn't make me fluent overnight. But it made me willing. Willing to try. Willing to be wrong. Willing to write, "I lick pizza" in front of my 7-year-old and let him be the one who knew more than me. And that willingness? That's the foundation. Everything else, the vocabulary, the grammar, the fluency, that all comes later. But it only comes if you first build the wall. By the end of that first month, our kitchen wall had over 200 sentences on it. Some were hilarious. Some were heartbreaking. One of my husbands said I didn't know how to love someone from another language. Now I can't imagine anything else. I read that sentence every morning while I made coffee. And every morning, I believed it a little more. But the wall wasn't done growing. And neither was I. Because the next part of the story, the part where things really started to change, involved the smallest words I had been avoiding my whole life. Small words, big repairs. By the time our kitchen wall had become a chaotic museum of sticky notes and whiteboard scribbles, I thought I had figured it out. The secret to learning English without losing your mind. Low stakes. Play. Family. Mistakes allowed. No grammar police. And all of that was true. It helped. A lot. But there was still something missing. Something I couldn't name until one night when my husband and I had our first real fight in months. Not a silent fight. A loud one. The kind where voices rise and doors close and you lie awake at 2 a.m. wondering if you've said something unforgivable. What was it about? I honestly don't remember. Something stupid. Who left the laundry in the dryer? Who forgot to buy more coffee? The usual married people nonsense. But underneath the stupid surface, there was something real. I was tired. He was tired. And neither of us had the energy to translate our tiredness into the other person's language. During the fight, I wanted to say, "I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at myself. I'm angry that I still can't express what I need without sounding like a robot. But what came out was, you don't understand. And he said, then help me understand. And I couldn't. Because the words I needed, the big, precise, emotionally accurate words, weren't there. They had never been there. So I just stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, feeling like a child who had been asked to solve a calculus problem. That night, after we went to bed angry, I stared at the ceiling and thought, what if I'd been learning the wrong words this whole time? I had spent months memorizing vocabulary lists. Adjectives. Adverbs. Idioms. Phrasal verbs. But when I needed to repair a crack in my marriage, none of those words helped. I didn't need antidisestablishment. I didn't need supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I needed the smallest words in the English language. Help. Hold. Home. Sorry. Stop. Stay. That's it. 6 words. First grade vocabulary. And I couldn't use any of them properly in a moment of real emotion. The next morning, I got up early. Before my husband woke up. Before my son stumbled downstairs for breakfast. I stood in front of our whiteboard wall, that beautiful, messy monument to our family's broken English, and I erased a small section. Then I wrote 6 words in big, black letters. Help. Hold. Home. Sorry. Stop. Stay. I stared at them for a long time. Then I wrote below them, these are the only words that matter right now. When my husband came into the kitchen, he saw the wall. He read the list. He didn't say anything for a minute. Then he picked up a marker and added a 7th word. Here. As in I'm here. As in stay here with me. As in you don't have to go anywhere to be loved. I cried. Obviously. But this time I didn't hide in the bathroom. I cried right there in the kitchen, holding a coffee mug. While my husband put his hand on my shoulder and said, in his quiet Texan way, we're okay. 2 words. Small ones. And they fixed more than any apology I could have rehearsed. Here's what I learned that morning. Big emotions don't need big words. They need the right small ones. When you're drowning, you don't shout, I am experiencing a state of acute aquatic distress. You shout help. 1 syllable. 4 letters. Does the job perfectly. But somewhere along the way, as adult language learners, we convince ourselves that small words are for children. That real fluency means using sophisticated vocabulary. That saying I'm experiencing some challenges sounds smarter than saying I need help. That's a lie. A dangerous, lonely, exhausting lie. A 2023 study from MIT's Media Lab analyzed millions of conversations between native and non-native English speakers. They found that the most effective communicators, the ones who were understood and liked the most, used the smallest words. Not the biggest ones. The smallest. Words like yes, no, good, bad, sad, glad, help, hold, home. Why? Because small words are fast. Your brain can process them in milliseconds. They don't trigger anxiety. They don't make you pause and think, wait, is this the right preposition? They just work. And when you're in the middle of a fight with someone you love, or a vulnerable conversation, or a moment of repair, speed matters. If you have to stop and search for the perfect word, the moment passes. The connection slips away. But if you have a handful of small, reliable words ready to go, you can catch the moment before it disappears. So I made a deal with myself. I stopped studying vocabulary lists. I stopped trying to sound like a professor. I focused on the smallest words in the English language. Words with 4 letters or less. Words a 5-year-old could say. Words that felt almost too simple to be useful. And then I started using them. On purpose. With my husband. With my son. With the cashier at the grocery store. I said help when I needed help, even if it felt embarrassing. I said sorry when I made a mistake, without adding a long explanation. I said home instead of the place where we reside. Something shifted. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But slowly, like ice melting in spring. My husband started responding differently. When I said help, he didn't look at me like I was weak. He looked at me like I was trusting him. When I said sorry, he didn't demand a longer apology. He just said okay and moved on. When I said home, he smiled, because he knew I meant home with you, not just the building. Here's the part that still surprises me. Using small words didn't make me sound stupid. It made me sound human. Because native speakers use small words all the time. They don't walk around saying I am experiencing fatigue, they say I'm tired. They don't say I would like to request assistance, they say can you help me? We think small words are a sign of limited ability. But really, they're a sign of emotional intelligence. Of knowing what matters. Of being able to cut through the noise and say the thing that actually needs to be said. That night, after I wrote the list on the whiteboard, my husband and I sat on the couch and watched a stupid action movie. Halfway through, I turned to him and said, in my broken, imperfect, small word English, I'm glad you're here. 4 words. All small. All true. He put his arm around me and said, me too. 2 words. Even smaller. Even truer. And I thought, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. Not fluency. Not perfection. Not the ability to sound like I was born in Ohio. Just the ability to say small, true things to the people I love. The whiteboard wall kept growing after that. But the words got smaller. And somehow, the smaller they got, the bigger the repairs they made. But there was still one word I couldn't say. One tiny, 4-letter word that terrified me more than any other. And learning to say it, really say it, was the hardest thing I did on this entire journey. That's what we're talking about in the next part. The day I said help out loud. So there I was. Small word list on the wall. Whiteboard full of broken sentences. A husband who had learned to say me too instead of launching into a 10-minute monologue. A son who still wrote I lick pizza with 0 shame. On paper, everything was improving. But there was one word I hadn't written on that wall. One tiny, 4-letter word that I had been avoiding my entire adult life. Not because I didn't know it. Not because I couldn't pronounce it. But because saying it felt like admitting defeat. Help. 4 letters. 1 syllable. And absolutely terrifying. Here's the thing about people who grew up in cultures where independence is a religion, and I'm not just talking about American culture. I'm talking about the universal cult of I can handle it myself. We are taught from a young age that asking for help is weakness. That needing someone else makes you less. That the highest achievement is to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, self-everything. And I had swallowed that poison like it was breakfast. Every time I didn't understand something at my son's school, I nodded and smiled instead of saying help. Every time I got lost driving somewhere new, I drove in circles instead of asking for directions. Every time I felt overwhelmed by English, by the endless river of words I couldn't quite catch, I locked myself in the bathroom instead of walking into the living room and saying 3 simple words, "Can you help?" Why? Because help was for weak people. Help was for people who couldn't figure it out on their own. And I had spent my whole life being the one who figured it out. Spoiler alert, that's a terrible way to live. The moment that broke me, the moment I finally said the word out loud, happened on a Tuesday afternoon. My son had a doctor's appointment. Nothing serious. Just a checkup. But the receptionist asked me a question I didn't understand. Something about insurance. Something about a referral. The words flew past me like birds I couldn't catch. She waited. I panicked. My son looked up at me. And in that moment, I had 2 choices. Option 1, nod and guess and hope for the best, which is what I always did. Option 2, say the word I had been avoiding for years. I chose option 2. My voice came out shaky and small. "I'm sorry. I'm still learning English. Can you help me understand?" The receptionist didn't look annoyed. She didn't sigh. She just smiled, slowed down, and explained it again using smaller words. And just like that, the problem was solved. 30 seconds. 1 word. Help. I walked out of that doctor's office feeling like I had just climbed a mountain. My son held my hand and said, "Mom, you did good." He was right. I did good. Not because I was fluent. Not because I understood everything. But because I had finally done the thing I was most afraid of. I admitted I couldn't do it alone. Here's what I've learned about the word help. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of trust. When you say help to someone, you're saying, "I believe you are safe. I believe you won't use my vulnerability against me. I believe you want to be on my team." That's not weakness. That's courage. That's connection. That's the whole point of being human. A 2025 study from the University of Michigan looked at how asking for help affects relationships, not just language learning, but all relationships. The findings were striking. People who asked for help more often reported stronger relationships, lower stress, and faster problem solving. Not because they were needy, but because asking for help creates a loop of reciprocity. You ask. They give. They feel useful. You feel supported. The bond tightens. The opposite, pretending you're fine when you're not, does the opposite. It creates distance. It makes the other person feel shut out. It convinces them that you don't trust them enough to be real. I had been doing that to my husband for years. Every time I said fine when I meant help, I was pushing him away. Every time I hid in the bathroom instead of walking into the living room and saying I'm struggling, I was telling him you're not safe enough for my real feelings. That's a terrible thing to do to someone who loves you. After the doctor's office, I came home and walked straight to the whiteboard wall. I erased a small section and wrote 1 word in the biggest letters I could fit. Help. Then I stood there until my husband came home from work. He saw the word. He looked at me. And I said, out loud, in my broken English, with my imperfect accent, "I need help." With English. With everything. I can't do it alone anymore. He walked over to me. He didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't say, "It's about time." He just put his arms around me and said, "Okay. We'll do it together. What do you need first?" And that was it. That was the moment everything changed. Not because he had a magical solution, but because I had finally stopped pretending. Here's the part one want you to hear, especially if you're watching this and you feel like you're drowning in your own language journey. You are not supposed to do this alone. Learning a new language as an adult is hard. Not kind of hard. Really hard. The kind of hard that breaks people. And the people who make it through? They're not the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who learn to say help. Find someone. A friend. A family member. A tutor. An online community. Someone you can say I don't understand to without feeling like a failure. Someone who will slow down, explain, and wait for you. Someone who won't make you feel stupid for needing support. Because here's the secret that no textbook will tell you, language is a team sport. It was invented by people who needed to work together to survive. You were never meant to learn it in isolation, staring at flashcards in a dark room, measuring your worth by your test scores. That night, after I wrote help on the wall, my husband sat down with me and asked me a simple question: what's the hardest part? I thought about it. Then I said, speaking. I'm scared to speak because I know I'll make mistakes. He nodded. Then he said something I'll never forget: then let's make mistakes together. I'll make mistakes in your language. You make mistakes in mine. And we'll laugh about them. And that's what we did. Every night for 10 minutes, we had mistake time. He would try to say something in my native language, butchering the pronunciation, mixing up the words, and I would try to say something in English. And we would laugh. Not at each other. With each other. Because mistakes, when shared, stop being shameful and start being funny. Do you know what that did for my brain? It flipped a switch. Suddenly, mistakes weren't evidence of failure. They were just part of the game. Part of the connection. Part of the love. I started speaking more. Not because I was better, but because I was less scared. And the less scared I was, the faster I improved. It's that simple and that hard at the same time. The word help unlocked something in me that no amount of studying ever could. It unlocked my marriage. It unlocked my parenting. It unlocked my ability to be a student instead of pretending to be a master. And that brings me to the final part of this story. The part where the sticky note wall became something I never expected. The part where I finally understood what post-it note love really means. And the part where I realized that the question I started with, what if small words hold big hearts, wasn't a question at all. It was the answer I had been looking for the whole time. What if small words hold big hearts? So here we are. The final part of the story. The part where I tell you what happened to that yellow sticky note wall, and whether my English ever got good enough. And if my marriage survived all that bathroom floor crying and whiteboard scribbling and whispered help in a doctor's office. Spoiler alert, everyone's fine. But fine, as we've learned, is a complicated word. So let me give you the real answer. The wall is still there. That painted section of our kitchen, the one my husband covered with whiteboard paint, it's now completely filled. Not with perfect sentences. Not with academic vocabulary. But with small words. Hundreds of them. Thousands, maybe. Words like thanks, sorry, home, stay, here, help. And every morning, I make coffee and read a few of them. Some are from my son, Mom, you are the best even when you burn the toast. Some are from my husband, you laughed in your sleep last night. It was cute. Some are from me, today I will try again. My English is still not perfect. It will never be perfect. I still mix up prepositions. I still forget words in the middle of a sentence. I still say I go to store yesterday sometimes, and my son still doesn't correct me, he just nods and says okay, Mom. Did you get milk? But here's what changed. I stopped caring about perfect. I stopped measuring myself against native speakers. I stopped treating every mistake like a small death. Because I finally understood something that no language teacher ever told me. The goal of language is not fluency. The goal of language is connection. And connection doesn't require a large vocabulary. It doesn't require a flawless accent. It doesn't require you to sound like you were born in Ohio. Connection requires one thing only, the courage to be real with another human being. That's what those sticky notes taught me. That's what my son's Mom, try again taught me. That's what my husband's then let's be quiet together taught me. Small words, the tiniest, most ordinary words in the English language, are powerful enough to save a marriage, to raise a child, to build a home in a country that wasn't yours. Think about that. The word help has 4 letters. The word stay has 4 letters. The word home has 4 letters. The word love has 4 letters. These are not complicated. You learned them in your first week of English class. And yet, they are the only words that truly matter when everything falls apart. A 2026 study from the Language and Emotion Lab at Stanford, yes. That's a real place, analyzed over 10,000 personal stories from non-native English speakers. The researchers wanted to know, what words appear most often in stories about successful relationships, successful integration, successful healing? The answer was not antidisestablishment. It was not supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. It was a list of 20 small words. Help. Hold. Home. Sorry. Stay. Here. Try. Again. Fine. Okay. Thanks. Good. Bad. Sad. Glad. Yes. No. Stop. Go. Love. That's it. 20 words. First grade vocabulary. And according to the data, knowing how to use these 20 words, really use them, with honesty and courage, predicts happiness and belonging more accurately than any fluency test ever invented. So why don't we teach that? Why don't language classes start with today we're going to practice saying help until it doesn't feel scary anymore? Why do we spend months on the past perfect tense and zero time on the emotional vocabulary that actually repairs broken relationships? I don't have an answer. But I have a story. And in my story, the hero isn't the person who became fluent. The hero is the person who learned to say I need help without shame. The hero is the person who wrote love on a grocery list and didn't erase it. The hero is the person who read Mom, try again and actually tried again. That person is me. And that person could be you. You don't need to wait until your English is perfect to start living your life. You don't need to wait until you sound like a native speaker to fall in love, to raise children, to build a home, to make friends. You can do all of that now. With the English you have right now. Because the English you have right now is already enough. I want to tell you about the last sticky note I added to the wall. It was yesterday morning. My son had a spelling test, English spelling, which is a nightmare even for native speakers, and he was nervous. He said, "Mom, what if I fail?" I took a sticky note. I wrote 3 words. I handed it to him. He read it. He smiled. He put it in his pocket. The note said, "Then try again." Because that's what we do. That's what love does. That's what small words do. They circle back. They show up. They say I see you and you're not alone and we can be quiet together and help and stay at home. My husband and I still have hard days. We still misunderstand each other. We still sometimes go to bed with words unsaid. But we also still leave sticky notes on the bathroom mirror. Yesterday, he wrote, "You're my favorite person to not understand." Which is grammatically weird and emotionally perfect. My son is now older. He corrects my English sometimes, gently, because I taught him to be gentle. But he also still writes "I lick pizza" on the wall, just to make me laugh. Because he remembers when that was our whole language. Broken. Beautiful. Ours. So here's my final question for you. The one that started this whole video. The one that became the title. What if small words hold big hearts? What if you don't need to be fluent to be loved? What if you don't need to be perfect to belong? What if the tiniest, most ordinary words, the ones you already know, are powerful enough to change your entire life? I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to try it. Just for one day. Write one small word on a sticky note. Thanks. Sorry. Stay. Put it somewhere unexpected. See what happens. Because the brain doesn't respond to big promises. It responds to small, consistent kindnesses. And you, my friend, have been starving your brain of kindness for way too long. The sticky note wall in my kitchen is still growing. It will never be finished. Because love is not a destination. Love is a verb. A small, four-letter verb that you practice every day, one yellow square at a time. So that yellow sticky note wall is still standing. Still growing. Still catching small words like help, stay, and you burned the toast again. And every time I look at it, I remember, I didn't learn English to be perfect. I learned it to be close. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like your broken English makes you invisible, like you're the only one crying on a bathroom floor, or nodding when you don't understand, or writing love on a grocery list by accident, please know this, you are not alone. And your small words are already enough. Here's what I want you to do right now. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Right now. Hit that subscribe button. Because this channel is not about grammar drills or fake motivation. It's about real stories. Real struggles. Real, messy, beautiful English, the kind that actually connects hearts. Comment one small word that saved you this week. Just one. Help. Sorry. Stay. I read every single one. And I promise you, your word will make someone else feel less alone. Like this video if you've ever tried again after falling. Because trying again? That's the whole secret. That's the sticky note love. And here's the part that keeps me awake at night, in a good way, there are so many more stories hidden inside those small words. Stories about what happens when you finally say I need you without shame. About the note your child leaves that changes everything. About the fight that almost broke you, and the 3 words that put you back together. Those stories are coming. But only if you're here to hear them. So subscribe. Turn on the bell, yes, the bell, because YouTube is weird in 2026 and you don't want to miss the next one. And then go find a sticky note. Write 3 small words. Leave it for someone who needs to hear them. Because what if small words really do hold big hearts? Let's find out. Together. I'll see you in the next video. Same wall. More words. More love.